Hey, Jordan, what are we talking about today?
Hey, Selena. I made a call back in November of last year, and I said that convenience was going to be the word of 2022, and I stand by that. Throughout the last 2 years, we've really seen a massive change in consumer behavior. I pulled some stats: 50% increase in food ordering, your Skip the Dishes, your DoorDash, your Uber Eats, and almost 50% increase in grocery deliveries from just getting groceries delivered to home. And even Amazon saw a 37% increase in sales. No surprise. All of this really is about customers having access to whatever they want, whenever they want it. It's at your fingertips. A little embarrassed to say that I ordered a bag of ice because we were having dinner, making drinks, and we ran out of ice. So I ordered a single bag of ice.
You couldn't just go to the corner store, hey?
I was making drinks and making dinner, and it was more convenient to just get it delivered. Most expensive bag of ice. But convenience has really never been more accessible, and customers are loving it. I'm loving it. And this trend is not going away. Amazon increased their fulfillment infrastructure by 50% in 2020, and now employs over 1 million people worldwide. Convenience and giving the customer the control is now the reality, and I really believe it's here to stay. Who do we have on the show today to help us talk about convenience in the home builder space, Selena?
Today's guest is Tom Nelson, the CEO of UTour, which is an on-demand, interactive, self-guided tour technology company. They're doing some pretty cool things.
I'm excited. Let's
Me
get
too.
into it. You're listening to Build Up, the Home Builder podcast, brought to you by ZGN. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Selena.
We're marketers
And brand strategists.
and we love applying our expertise to the home building industry. Join us as we uncover industry insights, chat with colleagues, and explore exciting ways to push the home building world forward. Yeah, let's just have a little conversation first, Tom. Talk to us a little bit about UTour and how that actually came about.
Sure. So I've been doing marketing and advertising for home builders for 20 years through our agency, NDG. And, we've all heard about the importance of the internet and e-leads and things of that nature. But we also know majority of homeowners, before they make a purchase decision, want to go see something in person. And so while we're generating all these digital leads, we noticed we were only getting about 30% of those people to actually schedule an appointment to come visit on site. So I was trying to figure out what can we do to basically get more people to show up. They're interested in something, or they would not have registered on our home builder clients' websites. They were interested in something. What was going on? So really, we started doing a lot of research and trying to figure out why people weren't showing up, even though they were interested in something. And we learned an awful lot from the rental space. A company called Rently that was started in 2011 has been doing self-guided tours for over 10 years for people leasing apartments. And their data said that people were just couldn't make it when 40% of the time when they wanted to tour a vacant apartment, the leasing office was closed. So it was a convenience issue. So we started doing research with our builder clients' data and their prospects and just asking the question, you were interested in something, but you never showed up. Why? And our data said that half of those people told us they didn't show up because new home builder sales center hours are typically 10 to 6. Okay. And this was pre-COVID. This was in 2017, 2018. And they just, they just couldn't get there by 6 o'clock. They had many other activities going on. And then sales avoidance was what the other half said. They didn't want to talk to a salesperson on their first visit. So we said, hey, if we take, some direction from what's going on in the rental space, that absolutely can work for the home builder space. So I started in 2017 meeting with tons of different companies that, because again, by 2017, they had been doing self-guided home tours in the rental space for 5-6 years. So there were many competitors in that space. So we were interviewing them, and their platforms work great in a leasing environment, but really wasn't exactly what a home builder needed. So our initial plan was to just work with them and try to convince them to create a version of their platform that was more applicable to a for sale entity. And what we learned was that they weren't interested. Home builders tend to be very small portion of the real estate industry. They're kind of small potatoes. You know, if we get 100 units from a home builder, that's pretty substantial, but they can get that in one apartment building. So no one was really interested in creating a version for home builders. So once we kind of went down that path and realized that we were still so sold on the concept of it, we ended up developing it ourselves for one home builder client. And we launched that in 2018 and tested it and had tremendous success with it. And then decided in 2019, let's go ahead and create a company and offer this to more builders. And that's where UTour got kind of created. We announced it at the Builder Show in January of 2020. We took our first contract in May of 2020. And since then, year to date, we've done over 80,000 self-guided tours for home builders.
Could you get any luckier with your timing? Like, I know that COVID's not really lucky for anyone, so it's a bad word to use, but like as a business owner, Tom, could you get any luckier?
Yeah, I wish I could say I was that smart or shrewd, but it was absolutely a Forrest Gump moment where I fell backwards into it, no doubt.
It's true, but it's fantastic and it's incredible, and we've used UTour with a couple different home builders and love the product. But I want to talk about, like, obviously through the pandemic, that accessibility and that level of convenience and being able to just have access on your own terms, just because of everything that's going on, and private access for that matter. But my word for 2022 is convenience. And I see it kind of building out of the pandemic and all the access that everybody got. And them really kind of being like, I like this and I don't want it to go away. And I wanted to get your perspective on that thought, that convenience is kind of going to be a trend for 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the funny thing is the pandemic did not change the way people wanted to shop. All it did, it finally gave the nudge that home builders needed to try something new. I mean, this is not something that the home building industry, I mean, everybody moved quickly and I applaud them because we needed to. And everybody worked really hard to embrace it and to change the way they were doing business. But it came out of necessity. We were very much laggards in wanting to follow what consumer behavior wanted. The fact that, Carvana beat us to the punch of being able to fully transact, in a self-service environment before home building, should have been a big wake-up call, but it wasn't. It took the pandemic to give builders the nudge. But at the end of the day, all of these types of groundbreaking technologies, everyone talks of Uber and, Open Doors doing a fantastic job with the iBuying. I mentioned Carvana, car sharings like Turo. All of this is because the consumer demanded a better experience, one where they were in control. And up until the pandemic, home builders still held on to the two most important keys of information for a home shopper: access to pricing and access to product. Now, I've been working with home builders for a long time, so I knew they were not ready to fight the battle of access to pricing, which would be to generate the exact price of a house online. But I felt it was time, and again, this was pre-pandemic. I wish I could have said I had the crystal ball and knew it was coming, but I felt like access to product, the days of fence traps and 10 to 6, I just realized wasn't convenient for the modern life. And guess what? We already had a focus group that proved that with the whole rental space of how that was working. The data was telling us that people want to come see it, but they weren't because it wasn't convenient. So the consumer was the one asking for this and had been asking for this. But I agree with you. Once you give them a better experience, we're not going to be able to take it away. And in fact, now it creates more demand and they want a better experience on top of that. So I completely agree with you that, what I always say this, what got us here won't get us there.
That's such a good statement. And just a quick comment on the home building industry. I love it, and I've been working in it a long time. But boy, did these people not want to change quickly. They are just stuck in their ways, and they love doing things the way they're doing it. But guess what? Consumers are moving way faster than you are. And the builders who change are the ones who are going to respond properly to customers.
I completely agree with you. And I've had those frustrations of kind of the slow adoption times. But at the same time, I've been doing this long enough to realize you're moving a battleship, not a canoe, when you're talking about a home builder. I mean, it has the longest sales cycle of any industry. It is part retail, it is part manufacturing, it is part sales organization, and really, truly, let's be honest too, it's a data company. There's so much data now that's basically involved. So when you have so many bits and pieces for something that you're trying to sell that requires most people to take a loan, go into debt for 30 years, requires financing, requires manufacturing, has more regulation in some markets than even healthcare from time to time. There's an awful lot of moving parts that a home builder has to manage. So I give them a little bit of leeway on the slow adoption, but at the same time, I can't use that as an excuse. And the consumer wants what the consumer wants, and the ones that win are the ones willing to adopt and evolve fast enough to meet that demand.
So we wanted to talk to you a bit about the last 2 years, but I think you've answered that question for us already, that it's been really busy, which is fantastic. And, of course, the pandemic did push things and make us move quicker for pushing the industry forward, which is fantastic. But there was also a change in consumer behavior, like you were saying, and the new generation of buyers, Gen Z and millennials, who are like, come on, I don't want to leave work early to go tour a show home. So that change was coming, and we knew that. But again, Homebuilder is a little holding on tight to the old ways. So I'd love to know kind of what are the biggest questions that you're getting from home builders about your product?
Well, the first question that we have is, once they get over the big mind shift of letting people into one of their homes without a salesperson, and that's a big struggle for them, because they've got to get over the mindset of my friend Kevin Oakley at Do Converge has always said, you can't convince the unconvincible. His point, so a lot of home builders still think that the salesperson can convince someone to buy if they're there. And don't get me wrong, there's really good salespeople who can help people find justification for the purchase. But at the same time, if they don't love the home, they're not going to buy it. So the first mind shift that had to happen, and the questions we get asked is, well, what happens when my salesperson's not there to guide them? And so that is why we created an integration with Alexa. So as people are self-touring, they can ask questions of an Alexa device, get real-time features. We partnered with a vendor called Atlas RTX to develop a UTour chatbot, so that if people did not want to engage with an Alexa device, they could simply text questions and get instantaneous answers while they're touring the home. So we were saying, we can overcome that and give people access to information as they're touring the home. But the consumer likes it because they're not having to sit through a salesperson's presentation. It's on demand that they control. If they have the question, they ask it, they get the information. They didn't have to sit through a process. So that helps them get over the initial hump of letting people in the homes unattended. The second issue then is security. Okay, are people going to come in and rob me blind, steal our furniture, things of that nature? And so we are the only self-tour platform for home builders that has integrated security. So we are integrated with alarm.com. We're integrated with Brevo. Alarm.com has been a great partner for us, so that we can, you can access your entry code to get into that home, and it'll automatically disarm the alarm system, rearm it when people leave. Cameras are in the home. And a lot of our home builders standardize on their platform. So the hardware and all of that, all the devices were already there for us. And so we just integrated self-tour with their platform, but we're also working with several other security vendors for the same way. So if security is a concern, we can certainly address that as well. And of course, we never let anyone self-tour without verifying their identity with a driver's license or a credit card. We have mobile verification. We have terms and conditions that they have to agree to that pretty much says they're liable for any issues. So we've done a lot of steps to address security as well. But those are the two main questions we get is this really good for us without having our salespeople there? And then what about security? And we worked really hard over the last couple of years to address both.
I want to go back and talk about the Alexa for a moment and the chat bot, because to me this is really exciting. And I did a webinar earlier this year where I talked about kind of the future of the sales center of the show home. I actually referenced Carvana as an example as well, because it's really putting so much of the control of the process in the hands of the consumer. And I think that, in the car space as well, there's research that shows that millennial Gen Z customer, which is now our largest segment of home buying customers, they don't want to deal with a salesperson. Like, they don't want to go to a car dealership because they just don't want to deal with a salesperson. And I think it's the same in show homes, in the home building industry. And I just love the opportunities that Alexa provides and the chatbot provides to still give a really immersive product experience without having to, here's a salesperson who's going to lead you through and give you a different story every time, or, not really represent the brand that well. You can really control it from that Alexa point of view. And so what does that sort of look like for the future, Tom?
Well, the nice thing about Alexa, one of the biggest things that they've done that has been pretty impactful the last year or so, I believe it was last fall, they finally allowed the Alexa devices have always had the hardware itself, had motion sensing built in, but a lot of the commercial skills weren't allowed to actually use it. But Amazon changed that. So now what I'm able to do is when someone enters the room and there's an Alexa device there with motion sensing, I'm able for the Alexa device to greet them and welcome them and try to start the engagement. So I'm not at the mercy of the visitor basically starting the engagement. I can try to get the Alexa device to create the engagement. So motion sensing is one of the biggest benefits. And then secondly, many people aren't aware, but the Alexa Show, that's the one with the HD screen in it. I believe the HD10 is what is the most recent version. Alexa and Amazon, when the pandemic, they worked really quickly because they realized we were all doing Zooms and virtual video conferencing. So there's a Zoom integration with Alexa right now. So you can literally have a video conference over that Alexa device with a salesperson. Now, the caveat is the salesperson has to be available. And I will tell you that, over 40% of our tours in the US and Canada are happening after hours from 5 o'clock onward. So in some cases, some sales centers are still open at 5 o'clock, but from 6 o'clock on, they're closed. So it's not getting a lot of utilization because the salespeople are like, what, I'm off. I don't want to do that. But my point is the technology is available to have them speak to someone. Maybe they speak to, an online sales team. But the technology that I'm excited about with the Alexa device is really, the motion sensing that we're using today and the opportunity for video if the builder, was willing to participate in that type of arrangement.
I want the security cam footage of when people walk into the room and Alexa greets them, and they're just like, "Who's here?"
How cool is that?
Well, we send
exciting.
a lot of notifications in advance to let people know that it's there, so it doesn't catch them off guard. We also recommend with our builders, we've got some templated signage that they can just take and redesign into their own builder brand. But we try to let people know so that it doesn't scare them to death. But it is nice. We try to use it as a greeting and to try to create that engagement. But the chatbot came about for two reasons: is that Alexa does require Wi-Fi, and a lot of inventory homes builders have not wanted to put Wi-Fi in the homes, which I understand. But then also there's a segment of people that cannot stand Alexa. They're the anti-Alexa, anti-Siri. They're worried about, somebody's listening and recording. So we wanted to have an alternative. If you're more comfortable with voice, great. We could do it through the Alexa device. If not, majority of everyone is very comfortable in a text environment. So great, you can have the same experience via text. And if it's in an inventory home where Wi-Fi doesn't exist and the builder doesn't want to go to that expense, the Alexa device wouldn't be an option then we just make chatbots the default way to provide automated information on demand during that self-tour.
That's so cool. Tom, that virtual option of just jumping onto a call with a salesperson, if you're really feeling the home and you have a question and you're like, I need to get this done right now, that is such a wicked feature. I love that. It's exciting.
Well, what we want to do is we're not trying to bypass a salesperson. What we're trying to do is give the customer what they want and then try to get them to engage with a salesperson. So the data told us that they just wanted to see for themselves, they being the buyer, they just wanted to see for themselves, does it look as good in person as it does online? I've invested all this time looking at virtual tours and photo galleries, and I really, think this home looks fantastic. But Zillow's consumer report that they came out, the new construction report that came out in February, said that 70% said that they no, excuse me, 79% of people want to see the home before they make a decision. So, the desire is to see for themselves, and the data told us they just want to see, does it look as good in person as it does online? They want to see that for themselves. Then once they do, if they're interested, now they're ready to talk to a salesperson. So what we do is we send an automated text message within a minute of them entering the home. Says, if you have any questions during or after your tour, salesperson's email address, here's their mobile phone number. We're trying to create that engagement so that if you are interested, it's very easy for you to take next steps so that you can talk to a human and get additional personalized service. Because we're not advocating, the self-tour and self-service experience is what the millennial and even some older, even people my age in Gen X, they want that experience. And they want to go as far in the experience as they're comfortable, but they will get to a point where they're going, okay, now I'm ready to talk to a human. So we can blend great, personalized human service with the automation and the self-service capabilities. That's where you really have to go.
I think you can invest as much as you want into photography and virtual tours and everything like that, but you can't beat the physical experience and actually being able to see the shape of things and the feel of things and the space around you. So this just makes so much sense. And I love what you're talking about, Tom, in terms of, we've, instead of looking at it from the company point of view and what's best for the company and, the salesperson and what's theirs, ours, and how does this work best for us, you're looking at it from the point of view of the customer. And how can we make this the best experience for the customer and make it as easy for them to do what they want to do? Which, again, the word for 2020 is convenience. So I think you just got to do that.
Well, the two biggest examples to prove that that's true is think about yourself. Think about the last time you walked into some sort of store that had salespeople, like a department store. When they come up to you and they say, "Can I help you?" What's the first thing you tell them?
Just browsing.
Just looking, thank you.
But are you really just looking? You're like, no, what you really mean is, I'm not ready to talk to you yet. When I need you, I'll come find you. So the consumers have this expectation of, leave me alone, don't bother me. But there's a little bit of irony, but when I'm ready for personal assistance, you better be right there and ready for me. And so what you mean is, not now. Let me do my thing. Let me go as far as I'm comfortable, and then I'll let you know when I have questions. But the consumer does expect us to be there when they need us. And so if I tell builders that in context and they think about their own experience, they go, "Oh yeah, I do that all the time." Or they say the number one day, the busiest day at a car dealership is Sunday when it's closed, because people want to go and look at the cars themselves in person without having a salesperson there trying to convert them. Interestingly enough, we have a great anecdote. We have a home builder client that shared this with us. One of their sales team members saw that a self tour was scheduled at 6 o'clock for their community, and the salesperson decided to work late that day to try to run into these people and try to create a relationship and engagement and appointment. Well, about 6:15, they still hadn't shown up for the tour, so he assumed, well, I guess they're not coming. Shut down the sales office, locked up, walks out to his car in the parking lot, and what he noticed was they were there. They were sitting in the car waiting for him to leave. So they really wanted to see it for themselves. So I believe what we're doing now is, it took several years to get e-leads into an online sales environment where there was someone there to nurture them, convince them to go to an on-site appointment. I think what you're going to see a lot of more demand for, and we are, not only, we're already seeing it today, it's going to get increased in 2022, is before someone will agree to schedule that on-site sales appointment, they're going to want to do a self-tour first to go make sure is it worth their time.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember, like the example of the department store is so real. And the number of times where it's like, yep, just looking, but then, I do have a question on, I need someone right now. Like, why aren't they here
yeah.
right now?
And then you get mad.
And you get mad.
Yeah.
Store. If you've ever been into a Home Depot or things of that
Home
nature,
Depot. I was gonna
nope,
say
I don't
Home
need
Depot.
one. But man, when you want someone, it seems like you can never find them. And then that frustrates us as much as when they first hit you right when they walk in the door. So consumers, we're finicky, we're a fickle
Yeah.
bunch. It's
very hard to
leave me
please.
alone. I don't want to be bothered. But then where are you to help me? Why are you not here? So it's finding that fine balance. And that's where like I say, we've got to have the technology that provides the self-service, but it can't be completely self-service. You got to have the human element that's available to give a great customer experience. Because when people want help, they expect it instantaneously.
I know I do.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about kind of home builder leaders in the industry, and maybe any that have caught your attention and doing anything interesting or different.
Well, one of our builder partners that we're very grateful for is Taylor Morrison. They've started a new initiative called Venture, and we're doing a project for them in Orlando that is the first salesperson-less community. The sales center there is fully self-guided. They're utilizing our chat bots and the Alexa devices, and it's a community where you can go to the model and tour it in a complete self-tour environment, and then you can connect with a human virtually, via a video conference, phone, email, whatever the case may be. But there's no on-site staffing. We've got some other builders that are doing a great job of creating like sales hubs. We're helping people. Instead of having staff, if they're in a large community with multiple products, they may be building single families or neo-traditional townhomes, and so those may not all be in a model home park next to each other. So what we're able to do is, they may have model homes in various sections within the community, but they don't need to staff all of those models now. They can staff one and make it like a sales hub and let people self-tour the other models that might be available. Yeah, that's a couple of unique use cases we've seen that we're proud of.
I love the idea of the community hub, and we've been talking about this actually for a couple years. Just the way that the sales center, the model home has changed, and to build these and to put in, the classic style, you do the whole garage, you build out your whole brand displays, you staff it, all of those different things. That's expensive. That's a lot of money, and it's usually there for a couple years, and that's just a lot of money. So looking at technology and UTour and the ways that you can create a still really good experience, but not have to have that large of an investment over that many years. Like I think it's a win for the customer, and it's also a win at the bottom line.
Definitely.
Yeah, and we have opportunities to do incremental short-term benefits as well. A lot of home builders with their staffed models and show homes, they may not necessarily have a sales assistant. So that salesperson works every weekend, so they need a day off. It's typically during the week. They're either off Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, somewhere in the midweek, which tend to be your lower volume days anyway. Well, a lot of home builders we know hire temp services because they just need a body there to unlock the door and hand a brochure. And we're saying, you know what, for the cost of a temp for one day, you can have UTour for an entire month. So on the days off, don't staff it. Just make it self-guided. Same thing with closeout communities. You've got a decorated model, but you're down to a handful of home sites left. Why spend the money to staff it to close out that community? Usually the last few home sites are not the best anyway. Most salespeople don't want to be in a community that only has a couple of homes left either. So why not flip it and make it completely self-guided and do sales by appointment only? So, I agree completely with you that builders will be able to start making decisions for themselves. Is a fully decorated model worth it for this community? I think some it will still be appropriate, but in others, maybe not. Or what about the scenario where builders got, a couple of communities that are within a few miles of each other? Maybe he decorates the model of one and creates like a regional sales office, a sales hub, and doesn't have a decorated model in the other community. So there's ways for us to use the technology to save builders on the big expense that you mentioned of a decorated model, but there's also incremental savings on things like days off and closeout communities that they could also be using to save money today.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about the temp staff coming in for the one day, like what a change in brand experience from a temp person who, probably couldn't tell you the first thing about the brand to, a UTour experience where, if you've got the Alexa and everything else, like you just still get the whole brand experience. That's so different.
Yeah, it's a brand controlled environment still.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're a salesperson listening to this podcast today, don't worry. We still see a role for you in home buyer, home building.
Yeah.
It's just evolving.
I want to interject there for a second, Jordan, because I have a question for Tom directly about that. From my perspective, if I were a show home or a home builder seller, it would almost be nice to have pre-qualified leads. Like, it would be really tough to chase down people that were just looking and they were looking through 10 communities that day and you were a checkmark on their list. So I wonder, Tom, if you could speak to maybe the follow-up process and how the salespeople in some of your bigger clients have divvied up those leads. Like, what is the impact there? Because I imagine it's like you're doing the first filter for them.
Well, that's the thing that we've always said. Look, we're not trying to replace salespeople. If anything, we're hoping that we are filtering through and bringing them the best of the best, and they spend more of their time in closing and helping those people transact than they are in show and tell. I mean, think about it. Why did the OSC process get created? It was to filter through the volume of digital leads to find the best of the best to then hand them off to the salesperson. So it was to not have the salesperson chasing after all these digital leads. We're just adding one more filter to the process. So in theory, what we're doing is actually giving, when that connection that happens with the salesperson, we're giving them a better quality lead. They've already gone online, saw something they liked or they never would have shown up. They've shown up. Now they're contacting you. So they're interested, and they're like 90% there in their discovery. Now what we're doing with our builders is we're able to push the data in real time to the CRM system. So we're letting them know, we let people schedule a tour in advance, or they can show up, schedule a tour immediately, and if no one's in the home, walk right in. But we push that data to the builder CRM system. And so if someone shows up, you can treat that like a walk-in traffic unit, and your normal sales follow-up process can just start, and the CRM system can kick that off. If they scheduled a self-tour, but they missed the tour, they didn't show up, well, we can then push that to your online sales team, and they can just treat that like any other lead and try to nurture them and get them to schedule another self-tour or an in-person appointment as well. So it's just one more piece that we're doing, but it gets inserted into the sales process. You don't have to blow up your entire sales model for self-guided tours. We're just inserting this into the process as like a additional stage and filter that's going to help bring a better qualified person and increase volume, because we're getting those people who are going to avoid you anyway. What we believe that we're doing is not taking leads away. We're adding more, because those are the people that the data told us weren't going to come because your hours weren't convenient for them, or they were just going to stay away because they didn't want to be sold.
Yeah, it's so true and so important. It's such an evolution of how things are operating, and the salesperson don't need to sit there all day and help people through and answer meaningless questions. Like, we want them working hard, and we want to give them hot leads to sell, and that's what this is pushing towards.
And most salespeople tell us, the time it takes to build the relationship and get to the nitty gritty of, helping someone transact is the part they find the most unsatisfying. It's the pre-qualification that basically has to happen. And, they want to help people. At the end of the day, yeah, we're selling, but a lot of people demonize sales. Sales is a part of everything that we do. We need them. They're a vital component, not just in home building, but for any company. But I get it. What they want to do is, their new home buyers are very guarded. They hold information because they don't trust the sales process, because they've had so many bad experiences. And sometimes it has nothing to do with home sales. They've had a bad sales experience in another industry, buying a car or something. So they tend to not disclose a lot of information on that first initial visit. Well, if that first initial visit is done in a self-guided scenario, Now they're able to really immerse themselves in the home. So usually what that sparks is questions. So instead of it being like this, okay, ground zero relationship we got to start building, the home buyer, the home shopper at this point talks to the salesperson and starts asking questions, which get the salesperson excited because they're buying questions. Hey, I noticed in this room there's this, or what was the exact square footage of this again? Or does that come standard? Now we're talking about the product and we can have a much better sales engagement because we were able to skip over all the introductory stuff.
Well, when you have a product that's so much money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think it's fair to give people some time to get to know it before being faced with somebody and being nervous and all that stuff. So Tom, we heard a lot about home builders and kind of what they're asking and what's going on, and we've worked with some, like Jordan said, and it's been a pretty cool experience, and we're big fans of the product. But what are you hearing from the shoppers themselves?
Well, they love it. It's the control. This is the biggest purchase that they're going to make. It's funny. BDX has identified 19 friction points in the new home sales process that makes someone jump out of the process. So there's just as many opportunities for a buyer to talk themselves out of that purchase as there are to justify moving forward. And there's no better way to help them get emotionally attached to the product than to be able to experience it in an environment that they deem as safe and no pressure. When they can spend more time in that home without anyone like looking over them, and they can really see themselves immersing it. I get excited when the data tells us that people keep going in and out of the home, because that tells us they're going out, they're looking outside, they may be walking around the neighborhood, they come back in. And I get real excited when I see repeat visitors of the same house. They were there on Tuesday, they came back on Thursday. The duration was 10 minutes the first tour, it was 30 minutes the second tour. You can kind of see the sales process going and see them working into that. So that's where I'm excited about it. But the feedback from home shoppers is they love the convenience of it, and they, more than that though, they love the fact that there's no sales pressure. And so, the feedback is that, it's a great feature. And like we said, while COVID gave us, the pandemic is what, forced us down that path and finally got the adoption where it needed to be. We've been telling builders, don't take it away. You don't want to go backwards. This is the new normal. And, what we're doing today is only the tip of the iceberg. There's so much other features and functionality that we plan to add in future releases to make it an even better experience.
We talk about it a lot on the show, and we firmly believe that, even this purchase, which is a big, very expensive purchase, it's still an emotional purchase. And having the ability to be in the house without a salesperson, without any of the other sales things happening, and to just be able to see yourself living in that house, to be able to see yourself and your family, feeling very comfortable, feeling like that's home. I feel like that's something that I really feel was missing. The salesperson's just sitting in the garage or in the other room, and you're trying to make that feel like your home. I don't think that works.
Or other shoppers.
Or other shoppers are coming through. Absolutely. You're trying to sit in the living room and just picture your family, and you cooking breakfast over there, and we're playing over here, and all those different kinds of things. Like, this just gives that opportunity to have that real emotional connection and really feel like home. And that's a huge part of the sales process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the biggest advice I give home builders is large builders, stop calling yourself a production builder. Yes, that's what you do, but production just makes it sound like manufacturing, and that, it's an assembly line and we're just grinding them out. And because, to your point, which I wholeheartedly agree with, it is an emotional purchase. This is a milestone moment in someone's life. This is so important to them. And as we said, if there's 19 friction points that can get them to say, I'm out, there's a lot of fear and skepticism that's baked into this experience. And so the more we can do to make people not only comfortable, but also immersed, as you said, to build that emotional connection, that's what you want to do. When we first started, planning to go into a SaaS model with our self-guided tour platform, we started A/B testing. Did we want to allow like one reservation, per person, and let them have the house to themselves? Or do we want to just basically let, multiple people in the house, the codes would not be, they would be unique to that person, but not restricted by time, meaning you could have 5 people in the house at one time, 5 different guests. And so we started A/B testing that. People felt the need when they were in the home self-touring. The minute somebody else came in to self-tour at the same time, they felt rushed. They felt like they wanted to get out of there. They stopped having open, honest conversations because they didn't want the people hearing what they were telling their spouse or, whoever might be there with them. So we found that the having the house all to themselves for that 30-minute tour duration gave them the opportunity to really, make a connection or not. This isn't really what we wanted. Let's keep looking for other things. Or while we really love this, I can see the furniture going there. I mean, we've heard stories of people bringing tape measures with them to see if, there's a certain piece of furniture will fit, things of that nature. And that creates that emotional connection that we're looking for. Because let's be honest, we don't make purchase decisions on the analytical side of our brain. It is absolutely the emotional. That's where that, it just feels right saying comes from. If we want something bad enough and we're emotionally connected to it, we can do all kinds of justification.
Oh, and we do constantly. That's what the emotion that I think, there's tons of neuro studies on it, and this is going off on a bit of a tangent, but I think in your daily routine and in everything you do and most of the purchases you make, it's something like 80 or 90% of all the decisions are emotional, and then you just back it up with that rational thought. But your brain is just wired to make you think that you're making all the rational decisions, and you're not. I'm sorry, it's emotional. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
Santana, you've got questions.
I have 2 questions here for you, Tom, and they're maybe actually a little bit more meta because they're less about home building. But one of the things we talk about here on the Build Up a lot is how other industries and learnings are applicable to home builders. And so you are a business owner who saw an opportunity, saw a disruption coming to the market, and you took the leap, which is scary because some businesses, we've seen it, right? Some of them do it too soon and they're 5 years too early. And what was a great concept failed because it just wasn't the right time. But you took that risk, it succeeded. So my 2 questions for you are, what is your approach now as a business to staying ahead of innovation? How do you keep innovating in an already innovative business? And then what would your advice be to home builders who maybe aren't used to innovating, from one business owner to another? What would be the thing that you would tell them to consider when they're looking to make that choice?
Yeah, great questions. The first one is to, listen to what the consumers demand because it's what they want. That's what it is. What can we do to make a better experience? Look at it through the lens of the customer. Think of yourself as the customer, not as through the lens of the builder. It's all about the consumer demand. Let's be honest. When the internet came out in the early 2000s, home builders didn't want the internet. No. I'm not. I mean, you don't know how many builders we worked at in the early 2000s that says, no, don't put information on the website. Just put our phone number because we want them to call. And we were like, they're not going to call. You've got to give them the information. They didn't want the internet. But guess what? A website is the hub of every home builder sales and marketing activity now. Why? Because that was the consumer wanted it. The builder didn't want it. The consumer wanted it. And the consumer is driving this demand. While COVID gave us the nudge that we needed, it was going to basically happen because it's the consumer driven demand. Uber was only possible because people got sick and tired of actually, trying to get a cab. And in some areas where cabs in rural areas are not very prevalent, Airbnb, same thing with the hotel industry, Turo with, not wanting to try to rent a car. I mean, all of these are consumer driven problem solving that if you do, that's where the innovation is going to come from. That's where the gold comes in because you're solving problems that people just have. That's all it basically is. So what I would advise builders to do is, again, especially the last 18 months, it's been shooting fish in a barrel. It's been freaking easy. We're all patting ourselves on the back, telling us how great we all are and this, that, and the other. The market's going to contract. When it doesn't and gets back to pre-pandemic levels, we're all going to be grinding it out again, trying to figure out what's the next best thing. And the fear that I have right now, because the last 18 months have been so good, is that builders are going to start getting overconfident and complacent. And I believe complacency is the enemy of great. And so what I want everybody to do is say, we've only scratched the surface. We've got to take it to the next level and continue to anticipate and consumers will tell you. We don't have to guess. They'll tell you. They'll tell you what they want. But at the same time, what we've always tried to do is, where's the benefit to the consumer? Where is the benefit to the builder? And if we can find a mutual benefit to both sides, then that's how you know the innovation is good. When it ever gets one-sided, it's never going to work. If this is great for the consumers but puts the home builder in a really bad position, it's not a viable technology, or vice versa. We've seen where builders have tried to control everything and force people to go through their process. And that's where you get the bad ratings and reviews and unhappy customers from. It's that balance of, can we constantly be listening to the consumer, finding out what they want, looking at related industries that have large ticket items. We can't follow the trends of clothing and apparel and things of that nature. It's the auto industry, anything that requires a large, expensive purchase. But housing is just so unique. What Open Doors doing with iBuying is just that's the future. That's not going away. That's Zillow may have jumped out recently out of that business model, but I believe iBuying is not going anywhere, and I think it's only going to get stronger.
And so is that your approach then to UTour, is maintaining a strong relationship with consumer wants and trends to see where you can evolve? Is that your approach?
Absolutely, on both sides. We're in constant contact with our builder partners. Give us feedback. We want to learn. We want to hear. When we first started out, we did 1-hour tours because we found that the buyers, the people that end up buying, wanted to spend longer in the home. But our problem is, if we stick to our model of only one visitor per time, you're only giving people 12 to 14 hours. You're only able to get 12 to 14 people through the home. So reducing it to 30-minute tours doubled the amount of people we could get through a home. And that was feedback from the builder. They said, yeah, we love when we see someone that stayed in the home for 45, 50 minutes, because that tells us they're an interested buyer, but we'd rather get more people through the home and have people stay in that home for 30 minutes. So we said, okay. So we listened and we heard and we evolved and we added that to the feature. We also listened to consumers, that if there were multiple homes in a community available for self-guided tours, when we first launched, if you were going to tour 5 homes in that community, you got 5 individual codes. And so they would just, kind of get confused on which code went with which house. So we learned from that. And now we allow you to, if you're coming there for a visit and you're scheduling for 5 different homes, you get 1 code, and that works for all 5 homes. So we're constantly listening to both the home shopper experience and the builder experience to say, what can we do to make things easier for both sides? And that's where our innovation comes from.
That's awesome.
Lots of exciting things coming in the future, which is lovely. Wanted to see if you wanted to share anything about UTour, any new features or anything coming up for the product that builders can look forward to.
A first look here on the
sneak
Build Up
peek.
podcast.
Well, I can't speak to a few of them, but we have some very large integration partners we'll be announcing in Q1. We've also got some new exciting features that we anticipate coming that might help provide more insight into how someone is touring a home and the path they take within that tour. So we're real excited about those features. And the one thing I can announce is lead sourcing. So we're integrated with BDX with their new home source platform, and you can schedule a tour from a builder's website. We have a realtor portal where builders can take and put a URL in their MLS listings. We have, our system will generate a QR code for every community, every home that you can put on signage. So we're launching it on January 1, is that there'll be lead sourcing available for every self-tour to tell you what gateway did the person take to schedule that self-guided tour.
Very cool.
The question we always ask at the end here, Tom, is what is the main takeaway that one of our listeners or any of our listeners should get from this conversation? So I'm going to start with Jordan, and Jordan, I'll ask you to pass it on after.
I think my number one takeaway from today's episode was that concept that we talked about, that this is really about putting the customer first and understanding the needs and the wants of the customer. And Tom made a really good point. This isn't something that, the pandemic created. This is just something the pandemic accelerated. And I think that that's so interesting and important, that the more that we can listen to and be in tune with our customers and what they want and what they want to do and how they want to shop, the better that's going to be for their experience, and the better that's going to be for your brand, and the better it's going to be for your sales. So that's my number one takeaway. Listen to the customers, put the customer first, and you're going to be in good shape. Who would like to go next? Who's ready? Oh, I'll pass it back to Santana.
I think I've been thinking a lot about digital transformation lately, and this confirms a bit of my bias, but also Tom shed some good insight, which is digital transformation is a big, scary word, but what it actually is a series of small steps to lead to big change. You find your areas of friction and then you implement small changes to reduce them for the customer. Digital transformation isn't this like we're tearing the house down and building it up from scratch. It's like you just slowly pick points of friction for your customer or places where you're losing resources internally, and then you find a technological solve. So that little bit by bit is how you get it done, is my takeaway from today. Selena, I'll pass it to you.
Sure. There was a lot of fantastic points made today, and a lot of talk about digital and, things getting accelerated during the pandemic. But the thing that kind of stuck with me most is something you said, Tom, about kind of something you see that's happening during tours, where you see somebody go in, maybe on their first tour, they spend 10 minutes, then they leave, and then they come back, and they spend 30 minutes. To me, that shows how digital kind of sheds insight on something so personal and emotional. It's like somebody's dating a home. It's so sweet. And it kind of gives some of that, personification almost to that home product, and something I always truly, truly believe in. And I think that I'm a big emotional pusher of like, this is such an emotional process in home buying. So for me, just that point is so huge, and that you saw that it's a big deal for me. So, really, really be mindful that this is such a huge moment for your buyer and letting them feel comfortable. And this is a tool, it's a technological tool that's helping them feel comfortable. And Tom will finish with your notes.
I know I said it before, but just to phrase it a little differently, and again, not to beat builders up, because I say I have the utmost respect for home builders. They are the ultimate risk takers. I mean, you take somebody that comes in, spends millions of dollars in land development, things of that nature. And I've seen municipalities shut a project down, at the 11th hour. It's a hard job, and I basically get it. Then on top of that, these unprecedented market conditions we've had for the 18 months, I get that people are just tired. I mean, at some point it was overwhelming. I've heard stories of OSC teams just being exhausted and wanting to quit because their volumes went up so high. So because of that high intense level, I get that there's this kind of a desire to say, I just want things go back to normal. I want things to slow down a little bit. But the one thing that I would express and like to leave people with is that constant change is the new normal. This is the new normal. What we did yesterday is not going to help us tomorrow, because the consumer is driving it, and the buyers that we're seeing grew up with the internet, grew up with a computer in their pocket. The data says that their cell phone is never more than 12 inches away 22 hours a day. There's data out there that says people don't feel safe if they don't know where their cell phone is. I mean, we're not tech savvy anymore. We're tech dependent. And so they're comfortable with the technology. So while, certain home builder leadership may be a little uncomfortable with technology, always look through the lens of the consumer. They're not afraid to sign up and buy big ticket items through their device. And so we've got to be ready for that. We've got to meet those expectations, but we also got to be thoughtful about it. It's got to be scalable. It's got to be repeatable. I get that. But like I said earlier, what got you here won't get you there. So, fight the want to go back to normal, embrace the new normal, and, just make innovation and change part of your DNA.
I love that.
Oh, thank you so much, Tom. This has been such a good conversation. I really
Really
appreciate
fun.
you taking the time to come on and chat with us. What's next episode about, Selena?
We're going to be continuing the conversation about the digital transformation in the home building world. And we're going to be talking about what the future holds for home sales and maybe buying a home online.
Exciting.
Cool.
This has been a ZGM podcast with your hosts, Jordan Mayer and Selena Hallaby, produced by Santana Blanchette, edited by Shelby Von Groven and Scott Steele, and supported by everyone on the ZGM team.
Woo!